A wealthy billionaire known for his strict routines and distant personality never imagined his carefully controlled world would shift on Christmas Eve. For years, he believed that money, luxury, and strict discipline were enough to provide everything his family needed. But everything changed when he walked through his mansion and unexpectedly saw his new maid quietly giving leftover food to his young son. The boy, who rarely smiled or spoke, accepted the simple meal with a gentle look that revealed how much kindness meant to him. The billionaire froze, confused by what he saw. He had never noticed how lonely his son seemed, nor how naturally the maid cared for him. That single moment made him question everything he thought he understood about parenting, family, and responsibility. What he chose to do afterwards surprised not only the maid, but everyone around him. Marcus Hayes walked slowly through his grand mansion, surrounded by silence and cold air. The house was magnificent, expensive paintings, polished floors, crystal chandeliers, but it felt lifeless. At 7 years old, his son Oliver moved through the empty halls like a ghost, carrying a sadness too heavy for such a small boy. Oliver barely ate. He pushed away food without complaint, as if his body simply had no appetite. His eyes held a loneliness that no amount of wealth could ease. He stood at the windows, hoping someone would appear and talk to him, but the silence never broke. Christmas music played softly somewhere in the mansion, but it only reminded him of what he didn't have: a hug, a warm conversation, someone who truly saw him. Marcus arrived home late, as always, talking on the phone while walking past Oliver without a glance. His wife, Catherine, swept through the halls in designer clothes, always rushing to the next party or event. She passed her son without stopping, her mind already elsewhere. Neither parent noticed how their absence shaped everything around them. Oliver learned to find comfort in toys and imagination, creating worlds where he wasn't alone, but the mansion's grandeur only made his isolation feel larger. He waited each day for a word from his father, a moment with his mother, anything that would tell him he mattered. It never came. Helen Foster started her job at the mansion with quiet dedication. On her first morning, she noticed a small boy sitting alone at the top of the stairs, hugging his knees, staring at nothing. She recognized the posture of deep sadness. Something in her moved toward him instinctively. She walked up slowly and sat nearby, not too close, but close enough. She didn't ask questions. She simply stayed there, offering silent companionship. Later, she prepared a small plate of simple food, soft vegetables, gentle flavors, and placed it near him without pressure. She sat beside him as he looked at it, then at her. Slowly, without forcing anything, she began to talk. Small things, light things, nothing that demanded answers. Over days, Oliver began to respond. His words came in whispers at first, then slightly longer. Helen never rushed him. She listened as if his words were precious. She stayed when he was quiet. She remained when he was scared. Oliver began to follow her from room to room, not out of need, but out of comfort. Her presence made the mansion feel less enormous. When Helen talked about colors or music or simple memories, Oliver's shoulders would relax. He wasn't used to being noticed. Helen's gentle attention slowly began to untangle the knot in his chest. Helen noticed Oliver's eating habits had worsened over time. He barely touched anything the kitchen staff prepared, so she tried differently. Small portions, simple dishes. When he took a bite, it was only because Helen was nearby, her calm presence making him feel safe enough. Each spoonful he accepted became a small victory that made her feel deeply proud. Days passed quietly. Oliver began seeking Helen out in the morning, his small footsteps following her as she worked. He no longer curled into himself, he stayed close without fear. The mansion began to feel different when she was present, less cold, less empty. Christmas Eve arrived. The house glowed with decorations, expensive lights, and perfectly arranged ornaments, but Oliver felt the same heaviness. Helen understood that decorations meant nothing to him. She prepared a special meal and invited him to help set the table. For the first time, Oliver participated in something that felt like family. They worked together. When Helen dropped a napkin, Oliver laughed, quietly but genuinely. She guided him with simple jokes and warm encouragement. The task felt less like a chore and more like play. For one afternoon, the boy who rarely smiled began to relax. Then Marcus came home briefly, rushing through the halls on his phone. He passed the dining room without slowing. He didn't see Oliver and Helen arranging the table with care. He didn't see his son laughing with someone who actually noticed him. He simply moved through the space, disconnected from everything happening around him. On Christmas morning, Oliver woke with the same heaviness as every year. Wrapped presents sat under the tree, but he felt no excitement. Helen found him staring at them without touching anything. She sat beside him, and after a long silence, Oliver finally spoke words he'd kept buried for years. His voice trembled as he asked why his mother never stayed, even on important days. He asked why his father acted as if he didn't matter. Years of confusion and pain poured out in quiet sentences. Helen listened without interrupting. She didn't make excuses, she simply held space for his feelings. Then Oliver made a request that shook her deeply. With eyes full of vulnerability, he asked if Helen could be his mother, just for one day. Not forever, just for Christmas. Just to know what it felt like. Helen felt tears threatening, but she kept her voice steady. She said yes. She told him she would be whatever he needed that day. She meant every word. Oliver didn't know that Marcus had returned early from a business meeting. He stood in the hallway, frozen, listening to his son's confession. Oliver's small voice asking for a mother, even temporarily, hit him like nothing ever had. As Marcus listened to Helen's gentle response, he felt something crack open inside him. He realized his son didn't want expensive things. He wanted presence, affection, someone who looked at him with kindness. Grace had managed to reach Oliver in ways Marcus never had. In weeks, she'd done more than he had in 7 years. The realization was suffocating. Marcus had believed providing luxury was enough. But watching his son's trust shift entirely toward the housekeeper showed him the terrible truth. He had failed at the one thing that mattered most. For the rest of the morning, Marcus remained hidden, watching. He saw Helen teach Oliver to eat properly, not through force, but through patient example. He saw his son take bites because Helen made him feel safe. He saw Oliver hold a simple teddy bear Helen had wrapped, not expensive, but chosen with affection, and smile in a way Marcus had never witnessed. The contrast was devastating. His son found more love in a small toy chosen by an employee than in anything Marcus had ever given him. Later, Marcus called Helen aside. His tone was different, genuine, almost pleading. He asked her directly what Oliver was really like when he wasn't around. Helen hesitated, but saw his sincerity. She told him everything. She described Oliver's refusal to eat, his constant sadness, his belief that he was invisible. She explained how the boy reacted to the smallest kindness, how he clung to any moment of attention. She didn't exaggerate, she simply told the truth. As Helen spoke, Marcus felt each word like a blow. Hearing that his son lived in constant loneliness devastated him. The years spent chasing financial success now seemed meaningless. What was wealth worth if his own child felt abandoned? When Helen finished, Marcus didn't defend himself. He thanked her sincerely, almost emotionally. He told her he was grateful she had taken care of his son when he failed to do so. He asked her to stay close to Oliver for the rest of the day, admitting he didn't know how to fix everything yet. Helen promised she would. She always would. That afternoon, Marcus made a decision that shocked everyone. He cancelled all his important commitments. He asked the staff to help create a warm, inviting atmosphere in the mansion. Then he asked Helen to bring Oliver to the main room. When Oliver arrived, he stopped and stared. The lights were softer. The dining table was simple but thoughtful. There was no grandeur, just warmth. Richard stood beside it, nervous in a way Oliver had never seen before. Marcus spoke to his son with a voice full of genuine regret. He admitted his mistakes. He told Oliver he hadn't been the father the boy deserved. His words weren't rehearsed. They were honest, shaky, full of real emotion. He explained that he had spent too many years focused on work and had allowed distance to grow between them. He said he wanted to change that starting tonight. The food he'd prepared might not be perfect, but he wanted to share it with his son. Oliver clutched his teddy bear, searching his father's face for truth. Finding it, he took a small step forward. Richard pulled out a chair with genuine care, not formal gestures, but honest affection. Oliver sat down slowly. Richard took a seat beside him, staying close without overwhelming him. For the first time, Oliver ate the food his father had prepared. Not because he was forced, but because his father was there, trying. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. As Oliver took another small bite, Richard felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. Helen watched from the doorway, amazed. Something important was forming between father and son. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, but powerful, genuine. When the meal ended, Marcus turned to his son with a soft expression. He told Oliver that he wanted Helen to continue working with them, not as an employee, but as an essential part of their lives. He explained that she had helped him see what he'd ignored, and that she had become irreplaceable to Oliver. Oliver listened with wide eyes. Helen, standing nearby, felt her heart warm. She accepted quietly, promising she would always care for him. Moments later, Catherine entered and immediately sensed the shift. The room felt different, warmer, close. She tried to approach with her usual irritated tone, questioning what had happened. But Marcus, transformed by the day's revelations, didn't respond as he normally would. He calmly told her that things needed to change. If she wanted a place in their lives, she needed to treat her son differently. He would no longer ignore Oliver's feelings or allow the boy to be pushed aside. His tone was firm, but not angry. It was the voice of a man who had finally understood what mattered. Catherine left in frustration, offended by his ultimatum. But Oliver didn't feel scared. He felt protected. His father wasn't disappearing. He was staying. As evening settled, the three of them remained together. Helen brought out simple desserts. Oliver tasted them and made funny faces when they were too sweet. Marcus pretended to be shocked. Oliver giggled, a real, natural laugh that filled the room. For the first time in years, Oliver laughed like children do when they feel safe. He moved between his father and Helen, comfortable with both, as if he finally belonged somewhere. Marcus watched every reaction, amazed at how lively his son became when surrounded by genuine care. The mansion, which had been silent and cold for so long, felt different now. The warmth came not from lights or decorations, but from affection. Oliver tried different pieces of dessert, laughed at small things, and at one point rested his head lightly on Helen's arm. He looked at his father, found acceptance there, and felt something settle in his chest. Security, belonging. By the time the night ended, something had fundamentally shifted in the mansion. The coldness that had defined it for years had faded, replaced by comfort that made everything feel softer. Oliver held his teddy bear, sat between Helen and his father, and felt safe in a way that warmed his entire being. Marcus finally understood what he'd been missing. It wasn't about providing everything, it was about being present for anything. It was about noticing his son, valuing his feelings, and choosing him over spreadsheets and meetings. Helen had shown him what fatherhood could look like. She had shown Oliver what love felt like when it came from presence rather than presence. And in showing both of them, she had changed everything. That Christmas night marked a turning point none of them had expected. Marcus's transformation wasn't small, it was visible, powerful, and real. The staff sensed it, Oliver felt it. Even Catherine couldn't ignore it. For Oliver, Christmas morning became the first moment in years where he felt truly protected, truly seen, truly loved. Not because of what he was given, but because of who finally showed up to give it. The mansion, with all its wealth and grandeur, had finally found something money could never buy. Warmth, presence, a father who chose his son, and a boy who finally knew he mattered.